In part 3 of this video series with Adam Apollo, one of the most brilliant minds on the planet, and guest co-host Laura Stadler, we learn that crystals are not only sentient, they record everything that happens around them and are capable of telling us their stories. Another exercise that we did that was absolutely mind-blowing. You divided us into groups of 10, and then you introduced a crystal to each group.
Yep.
So the first person was to, I forgot the words that you used, but it was not to use a long, spend maybe 30 seconds at the most with it. Just close your eyes and feel into it, just enough that you can share what you're getting from this crystal.
Yep.
And then we passed it around the group. And as it turned out, I was the first person to receive the crystal, and Laura was to my right, so she was the last.
Nice.
And it was just incredible that after all 10 of us shared what are the little piece that we got from this crystal, and then when you shared where that crystal had been and what it had experienced, the story came together. It was like this little thing was just a recorder.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
Well, and for everyone out there, the fundamental of this is to understand that matter has memory. Physical matter remembers things. Now we see this in experiments now all the time with water. And how do we do it with water? Well, because water changes shape, so it can actually show us how it's storing memory. So, for example, there's a woman named Veda Austin.
Yes.
Highly recommend people go out and look her up. Veda Austin, Veda Austin. And she's a friend of mine, and she kind of furthered Dr. Emoto's work, if you're familiar with his work, where Dr. Emoto's work is very challenging to validate because you are taking water and you're imprinting it with a word, and then you have to have a really good microscope. And, it's even better to have a microscope with photographic things so you can store it. Most people don't have those kinds of tools. But what Veda does, and you can do this yourself, just order a set of Petri dishes from Amazon, and you put, a little bit of water in a Petri dish, just enough to cover the bottom, and you can place that Petri dish on a photograph. And you can then put that Petri dish 30 seconds only on the photograph. You put it into the freezer, and the first layer of ice will form within usually about 5 minutes or so. You take out the ice after that first layer is frozen, and what you'll notice is that the ice will actually imprint the patterns that were on the photograph, the structure, it's literally rendering aspects of the photo. And she found also you could put a sunflower seed in that water for a matter of 30 seconds, take it out, put it in the freezer. The ice will actually render the whole structure of the entire sunflower. If you put an empty shell of a sunflower seed in the water, it will only just render the shell. So the information is actually inside the seed, right? And in matter, what we know now and what we're finding in unified physics, which is a lot of my work, is that solid matter, especially metals, stones, things like that, because the protons are the same protons in it for thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years, the data inside of a piece of metal or a piece of stone stays consistent inside of it. And so this is why a lot of people have this sort of intuitive sense that crystals hold memory, that they can store things that you put in them. Well, that's not just an idea, and it's not just again, a metaphysical woo-woo practice of like whatever, what we're discovering is there's actually complete and defined physics to that. And that memories actually may store themselves completely inside of protons, inside of matter, and that it's possible to entangle with matter. And this might be why when certain people go to certain places, Egypt, Stonehenge, large megalithic sites, they have visions and experiences coming through that are actually memories that were stored inside of that stone and that they're now retrieving from that stone. So as we pass around these stones within a circle, I picked, 5 different random stones from altars I had in a bag, and they all had been in different places with me and different parts of the world, and or been through different kinds of experiences, and some of them have different meanings that I ascribed with them, and other things that were around them, in the places that they've been, in my home and in my sacred places. And so by giving each of these to a group of 10 people and letting them read the energy, read the memory from the stone, what happens is that they each share what they saw, what they felt, was their memory. And then I get the really fun part of getting to confirm for them that each of them touched into something that is related to that stone. And it's a really cool practice because I think a lot of people don't really believe that they could be psychic or that they could know things about something just from touching it for 30 seconds. And that's one of the big things that breaks through for people is they're like, oh, wow, like that little thing that I thought was probably totally irrelevant is actually relevant. And the other really beautiful benefit is that you start to understand that when you're in a group of people can each find different facets of something. And so you can know a lot more about something that you tune into together collectively than you can on your own. And this has been proved scientifically as well in remote viewing studies and the work of Caroline Corey, for example, with her Superhuman film, and Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Group and other groups out there. So do you want to share what your experience was of this particular exercise?
I would love to.
Great.
The crystal that we had was black with some rings around the center. It was a tiger's eye. When I put that crystal in my hand, I had such a feeling of expansiveness that if you could plant a seed to grow a planet, that's what it felt like. It felt like a planet seed. I didn't know how else to explain it. It was just like,
Yeah.
and so that was the piece that I got, just the absolute feeling of expansiveness.
Right.
Laura, she received last. You want to
and
share what you
I do
got?
recall, and I haven't had a chance to rewatch the workshop, but I do recall, it was a little bit like, telling a secret in the ear, the next person,
Yeah.
the next person. So, but anyway, it did sort of follow a sequence, as everyone was talking. And I'm like, this is really interesting. It's kind of like, there's like a narrative forming here. And I didn't, quite know where it was going. And so I had the tiger's eye, and I have a tiger's eye myself. So I'm really familiar with the stone, and I was holding it, and I was, thought again, maybe going more into the logic brain and thinking tiger's eye, and I thought about a tiger and an eye, and then it just took me, it kind of morphed into this vision of a witch, that had lost her eyes. I don't know if it was, from Clash of the Titans movie or something inspired by that. And so there was, this kind of blindness going on, and then I just felt this and it was very visceral, just vomit, just really, pretty intense, vomiting. And so then I just followed that vision and, you know, kind of that feeling. And then I saw the witch, you know, stirring the pot in her cauldron, and the vomit was going in the cauldron. She's just stirring it up. And then it alchemized the, you know, kind of like the dark, ugly, kind of toxic, you know, whatever emotions that were energy that was in that, alchemized into like a elixir, like it was a healing, you know, it just turned into this most beautiful, yeah, elixir, I guess, nectar, whatever you want to call it. And then I saw myself taking a cup of it and drinking it. And I think, yeah, I just followed that whole process. I didn't, you know, second guess it. I don't know. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't question it. I just followed it. So again, I think it was just like this automatic kind of like bit going in my head, and then just allowing, and then just following whatever kind of transpired. And that's what was shown to me. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And intense, by the way. I mean, that was an intense vision. And so, you know, as you were saying, Cindy, when the stone was passed around the circle, it was very much like each person had a fragment of the story of that stone. And your story of the sort of life force expansiveness, this like power to create a planet, I thought was really interesting, because that stone was the most orange stone that I had for a long time back when I was, you know, essentially in like high school into college days is when I first had that piece. It was stone in a bowl of crystals that my mom had on a bookshelf. And that stone became the stone I often used to represent the sacral chakra, the power of the sexual energy, of life force, of creative force, the ability to actually expand oneself with energy and with force. And so that your first reading on that was beautiful, because it immediately was like, oh yeah, no, she got the sacral power of the seed of the stone as a life force generator. And I also love the tiger eye aspect, because yeah, it looks black, but it actually is not at all. It's got all this gold that runs through it as you turn it and look at it. And some of the other story bits around the circle were things I remember, like a woman was saying how it felt like this endless mountains and forests and some kind of like crystal city in the middle of the mountains and forest. And that stone had been with me many times to Shining Rock near Asheville, North Carolina, where I was living. And Shining Rock is, you know, literally like a gigantic exposed crystal quartz structure on the top of a mountain, you know, near Sam's Knob and Black Balsam off of the Blue Ridge Parkway. And it's, you know, it literally has the vibe of this like ancient, how these mountains are this ancient crystal city. And there's all of this knowledge and consciousness inside these ancient mountains. And they're believed to be the oldest mountains in the world. And I very clearly know that there were different times where there was more advanced civilizations living there. You can feel it in the land. You can feel the energy of what was there before. And especially in the area around Asheville, it's very, very powerful. And then, you know, I'd forgotten, but I take different groups of stones with me when I go into ceremonial situations. And that tiger's eye was absolutely one of the few stones that I took with me into this first ayahuasca ceremony that I ever did, which was an extraordinary ceremony for me. And for those of you that have never done ayahuasca or heard about it, you know, you drink this pretty disgusting tasting, like, it's intense. It's a brew. It's this very, very powerful alchemical brew that you drink, and it's essentially going to bring you into a journey. And I'd say for most people, at some point, you also puke and you let out the stuff that you have been holding on to, or that's inside of you, that's ready to be released. And So that stone was with me, and that because it was in Asheville and in that time, and I only had a couple things I ever took around, and that tiger's eye was one of them. And so your vision of this, witch and brew and healing nectar being formed, but that also like comes from like this release of the self and the purging, was so deeply connected to, I feel like, the nature of my ayahuasca experience with that stone. It was actually really beautiful to hear you say that, and your own kind of like, well, I saw this. Like, you were like worried to say it because it was clearly an intense vision. But when you said it, I was actually like, wow, I'm so thankful that you did, because it just really, I think, anchored for me and for everybody else in the room, just how potent this experience can be in seeing the memory of objects.
Just
Amazing.
absolutely amazing.
I do have a question actually, just in terms of, recording information into objects, and that, that they hold energy. Obviously, I've heard also the same thing about, you're talking about natural sites, but also, places like the Notre Dame, or, where there are a lot of people who have congregated in places, that also is that's why one of the, reasons why people are attracted and feel that connection. But I'm wondering, there's, obviously the practice of clearing your crystals, like a lot of different ways of, kind of taking them outside under the moonlight, or, ringing or incense, or other ways of clearing the objects. So how do you explain, what that clearing is versus the, information that's stored in there? Is it permanent? Like, does it change? Like, because I know even for quartz crystals, for example, that's one of the best crystals to incorporate an intention, that it takes intention very strongly. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you have a hard drive on your computer, for example, if you go and do a formatting of the hard drive to kind of clear the hard drive, it will not actually erase all of the data on the hard drive unless you force it to what they call zero out. So you can literally format it as though it's completely empty. And when you do that, you now are able to save files to wherever you want inside of the hard drive. But it's actually just saving over the data that was there before, because it's a limited hard drive size, right, and data set. And so even when you clear the hard drive, it's not that the data is gone. You can take that cleared hard drive to a data recovery center, and they can actually get all your data back, because it's literally still recorded in the switches of ones and zeros in the magnetic disk itself, right? Crystals are very similar. Objects, proton matter. It's not that when you clear it in the moonlight, or you just, put it in the sun for a day, that the memory in the thing is actually gone. The memory is not gone at all. The memory is actually still totally there inside of the matter, inside of the proton. But it's inside the proton rather than being expressed through entanglement with you and other things. So just like data in a hard drive, you could pick up a hard drive, you can show somebody a hard drive, like I've got one here that's like a little portable guy, right? I could show you this. And you can see the hard drive, you can see that it's there. You could even take it apart and look at the disk, but you're not getting any of the information that way, are you? The only way you get information from this hard drive is by plugging in the right cable that actually connects to it, and then allowing the data to go into an exchange between you and something that you can actually look at the data, like a computer, right? And so different kinds of stones and different kinds of physical objects you can think of as different kinds of hard drives, and it takes different approaches to unlock the data and the information inside of them. Now, you are always having some relationship with the objects around you. So just by having, for example, this beautiful piece of labradorite that I have on my desk, it's there. It's always kind of remembering and storing aspects of my experience as I'm sitting at my desk. When if for example, I've had some tough times and things have been difficult and I've had a lot of rough thoughts and rough thinking and whatever, to some extent, the matter and the structure of the things around me I may be holding or affixing some aspects of that psychological experience in the things around me, which is why when we've gone through a marriage, or that we went through a divorce, or we went through a really intense transformation or period of change in our lives, why it can feel really healthy to actually just get rid of a lot of things that we had during that period. And it's not we know exactly why it is. The stuff reminds us of those experiences that were really painful that we're going through. And that's happening not just because we look at it and we think of the thing, but it's also because there's actual memory in it, and we are re-entangling with that memory. In other words, we're plugging into it all the time. Every time we look at the thing, we plug into it, and it issues forth the information that we plugged into it in the first place. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so, doing clearing of things is also very useful to kind of clear the cables, the entanglements that we have with those things, to release the things back into just being a thing for whatever it is. The stone is just a stone, and it can just be a stone, and it can mean whatever I want. I can change the meaning of something. Now, even though I can change the meaning of this, it doesn't mean it's not still going to be holding the thousands and thousands of years of experience that it's had. It's just that my relationship to it is a particular way. Now, this is also true of people, right? Like, I may know somebody and I might know them for a long time, and maybe we had a really intense, difficult experience with each other a long time ago. Maybe it was a decade ago. Well, now I can meet that same person, and I can actually release the part of me that was connected to them in that tough experience period. And I can reset that, and I can create all new kinds of information and exchanges between us. And it's not that the memory is ever going to be gone. I'm still going to remember. They're still going to remember. It's still true. It still happened. But our relationship is different. And the energy and the dynamic of that energy exchange is now completely different. So this is this is a useful way that we can look at these kinds of things and understand some of the deeper dynamics of the energetics, and realize that memory in many ways is permanent. It always is there, and you want it to be permanent. You want things to remember forever, because the beauty is that through the past, we're able to more clearly see the present and how we got to where we are. And we're also able to now better navigate the future. It's when we forget our past and we deny it and we block it out, that's when the problems really start. That's, if you've had trauma as a child, you block out that experience, you pretend it didn't exist, you try to rewrite that story, change that timeline, so to speak, or whatever. It is absolutely going to be detrimental to you, because then you're going to unconsciously act out the things that are from that trauma, because you're actually blocking the part of you that's capable of being conscious of what you went through. So this is where deep trauma healing comes in society and culture, when we actually accept our traumas, when we're willing to go there and actually allow that to have happened and to be true for us, and to be okay that we went through that, and to love ourselves and accept ourselves, and then love and accept that little kid inside of us, or that, that child inside of us. We are now developing a conscious relationship with the energetics of that pattern. And now we can consciously choose to behave in new ways. And suddenly, when that action is going to come out, or that particular way of behaving might come out because of, whatever, having a super angry stepdad. That was one of my things. My stepdad would just rage, and he'd scream, and he'd break things, and for a long time, I would feel that part of me come out, and I wouldn't know what to do with it. And now I know it so well that when I feel that part want to come out, I can just see it and I can love it. And I can just be like, oh, it's all right. You don't need to do that. You don't need to go there. And if I feel like I got to move that energy or whatever, I'll just go grab my swords and go out on the deck and I'll let it out through my body in a way that's healthy and refined and actually helping me manage and tone my energy in a better way. So it's only through consciousness of the unconscious, shadow and stuff inside of us that we're able to change the way we behave going into the future and in the present.
Wonderful. Does that answer your question? If you don't already have your copy of Adam's Gift, get your copy today at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or ArchwayPublications.com.